All right. Well, I want to welcome you all to our painting class tonight. Tonight, we are going to be painting a herd of curious sheep. Many folks in our artist community love sheep, and I know many of the ladies on the line here are looking forward to this. So I want to thank you all for being here. Um, I will go through a brief overview of the supplies that I'll be using tonight. And if you have any questions along the way, if you're watching the recording, feel free to send me an email or a comment in the YouTube video. For any of the ladies that are joining the live session, just feel free to chime in and ask questions. We like to keep things nice and relaxed along the way. So don't hesitate to chime in and ask along throughout the class. So the supplies that I'm using tonight are 11 by 14 canvas paper. I have an array of brushes, really small to large. These are really basic craft brushes. There's nothing fancy. And the more you paint, the more you'll learn how to manipulate your brushes. So it's really all about practice. So just take things one step at a time. I am using acrylic paint tonight. I always use the basic colors, the primary colors of red, blue, and yellow, because I'll teach you how to blend a lot of fancy, more unique colors along the way. And I also always have black and white to kind of control the different shades and tones of a given color. I always have a paper towel because I usually get paint on my hands. It's also a great way to dry off your brush if you get your brush wet. In addition to those items, I have a cup of water to rinse my brushes, and I have something to mix my paint on. So if I need to make orange or green, I need a small plate or something to mix my paint on. Tonight I am using palette paper. It was a fun little discovery I made in my studio. It's something you forget you have. I was pretty happy about that. So I have my palette paper out, which is an amazing, wonderful artist tool that will change your life once you have it. So I encourage you to invest $8 and buy some. The other tool that I have tonight that'll be helpful is a pencil. If you wanted to do any optional sketching up front, you can. We have Sandra joining us. Welcome, Sandra. We're just kicking things off. But we're going to start by I'm going to start with a little bit of sketching here in the background. The orientation for my picture tonight is landscape. So sometimes we do portrait, sometimes we do landscape. I'm going to do horizontal landscape tonight. And there are a lot of different elements in our inspiration. And I'm going to repost the inspiration into the chat window since Sandra has joined. Let's see here. Let me just repost that for her so she can see it too. So in these classes, we start with an inspiration, and our goal is not to copy the inspiration. Our goal is to be inspired by the elements in it and create our own composition. So what do we see in this inspiration tonight? I see mountains, I see a green field, and I see a herd of curious sheep just hovering in the middle. So one of the things I'm going to do as an artist is I'm going to take my pencil and figure out, well, where do I want maybe the top of the field to be? And for me, I think about that as like maybe 2/3 the way up. I know that there'll be some type of maybe lake or mountain at the bottom of this. So I'm just going to do a little bit of a line with my pencil just to say, hey, Megan, this is, of course, get a pencil that works. That's always a good thing. Let's see here. I use mechanical pencils sometimes. That's what I have more of right now. So I'm just going to draw in a line just like that, just to say, okay, this is something. Now, I am going to do a couple of tiers of mountains. Now, sometimes when I do mountains, I sketch them and sometimes I don't. And I was telling the ladies on the call tonight that I want to boost my confidence a little bit. I want to get my mountains right. So I may plan, maybe I'll do a little bit of a low ridge here. And maybe maybe this is a rolling hill and maybe I'll tuck in a lake within some of this area. So plan on like what you might want to put and where. Maybe I'll tuck a lake into this space here. Maybe I'll tuck a lake in right here. And then I'll have maybe my green fields will start below the lake line, right? So you can kind of pick and choose what you want to put and where. The more layers you add, the more you have to paint, right? So I am going to just do 2 or 3 tiers of mountains, and you can decide how much sky you want to leave up top. So I am just going to kind of add some tiers of mountains using my pencil. And I'm kind of layering them in, and they're fairly low in height. But this is where you just use your eye as an artist. You're creating the composition. Pencil allows you to erase it. It also will allow you to plan what colors to kind of put and where, which is kind of helpful. It allows you to visualize the space that you're playing with. So I have some rolling hills, which are less, peaks per se. And I have so these are like more mountains here. And then I have some rolling hills, which might be some green colors. And then I might put some blue in here for like a lake and then tuck some more green in. So you can see I'm just really planning out what do I want my hill region to look like, okay? So I'll give everybody, at least 5 minutes here to play with some of this sketching. And take your time. If anybody has questions throughout class, don't hesitate to ask. And then there is a rock wall that's a little further down that we noticed. So I might tentatively plan a little bit of a rock wall that's about a 1/2 inch high. So I might just kind of sketch out what a 1/2 inch tall rock wall would be. And I'm not going to do any design work. I'm just going to kind of hold this spot here, this bottom row, this area for a rock wall. And I'll probably put some green above it. And if you need help with like planning, with art, you can really do anything you want. So if I wanted to like write like rock wall in light pencil right here, and maybe I'll do green, you can write in if that's helpful for you. This is going to be blue water. So I'm just writing it softly. This would be blue. Maybe this will be green. This will be a green color. Maybe my mountains will be blue. So maybe I'll write blue 1 and blue 2 for my mountains, right? So, and this will be a green, maybe green 1 and green 2. So see how I'm writing things in? We don't always do that in this class. And I'll scroll here. I'll move this up so you can see it. But sometimes when you're doing layers, it's kind of helpful to think about like what you might want to put and where. And all this stuff was just kind of in my head, but it might give you an opportunity to say, hey, what color is this going to be? Or what is that shape? And if that shape doesn't have a purpose, then fix it or get rid of it or make a change, right? So I wrote it really softly. I know I can easily erase this, but it's just, I don't really do this in these classes, but it was kind of an idea because I got so many layers tonight. So you can kind of maybe plan out what you might want to do. So optional. Sometimes that's helpful. Sometimes it's not. Okay. So, and then my sky will be like a soft yellow color, which would be really pretty. So I don't need to write yellow up in the sky. Okay. So we always start with the background typically, and we work our way to the foreground. So I will keep an eye on the clock. I'll give everybody just like 1 or 2 more minutes, unless you give me a thumbs up, ladies. If you're good with your sketching, give me a thumbs up. If you need a 1 more minute, give me a 1 minute. I think Susan's probably close. Oh, you're good? Okay, cool. Thanks. So we'll go ahead and jump into painting. I'll always check in with you along the way too. I don't want to dilly-dally if you all are pros at sketching here. So color choices for tonight's inspiration. You can choose what you want to use and where. If you want to do oranges, which there's actually some oranges in here. So maybe I'll do like some oranges tucked in here as well. I'll just kind of play with that. You can do oranges, but for me, my mountains in the background, the big ones, I'm doing 2 big ones, are going to be different blue colors. I'll do a lighter blue in the background mountain. And as you come forward in the foreground with mountains, they get darker. So I'm going to do, I have blue 1 and blue 2. And then I'm going to do some tiers of green, and maybe I'll turn one of these greens into an orange. So I'll play with that and I'll work my way down. For me, my sky is going to be like a light yellow. So you can pick and choose in this class what colors you want to put in where. But I'm going to use yellow for my sky. And I'll mix my colors right over here so you can see me right along the way. And this is like a bright yellow, which is obviously too bright for the picture. So I'm going to add a little bit of white to it. So I'm going to mix a light yellow as my first step. So I'm putting yellow on my plate and a little bit of white. You don't need very much. And you can grab any size brush that you're comfortable with. I use this 1/2 inch brush as like my big brush in classes typically, since I'm working on such a small space. But I'm just going to take a little white and a little bit of yellow, and I'm going to mix it into a tone of yellow that I like. So I'm just mixing it into a light yellow, a certain hue, whatever color yellow you would like. If you don't want to do yellow, you don't have to. You could do a light blue sky. That would look fine too. The light yellow is just going to brighten it up for me a little bit. And I'm just going to paint the entire sky light yellow. And you can make more as you go. There's very little risk here. During these classes, I'll always encourage you to take your time. We all work at different speeds. So tonight's inspiration has a lot of detail. So I'm not going to be dilly-dallying too much. I'm going to be moving pretty quickly just because of the time factor. If I took my time, we would probably be here for 2.5 hours tonight, which I'm sure you would imagine. There's a lot of layering and details here. But you can certainly take your time. You will do what feels right, and that's the most important thing. And the class is being recorded, so if you need more time, just take it. Now with pencil, you have the option to do like a gentle erase. So as I'm getting closer to my mountain lines, I'm saying, Megan, should I do a little bit of light erasing? Probably not a bad idea, because you're going to bring this yellow right down. So I'm going to do a gentle erase so I can still see my mountain line. I usually push down, not pretty hard, just so I want you to be able to see my lines, but you may have done your lines lighter than mine, which I would always encourage you to do as light as lines as possible. Okay. It's good to, and you can always do a couple coats of paint to cover up the lines if you need to. But I'm going to bring the yellow right down to the top of this first mountain. We're going to let it dry. And I'll come in with that blue and I'll re-add that ridge line to make it look nice and fancy after. But we always just take things one step at a time in these classes. I try to slow us down and be thoughtful of what we're doing and why. This step is pretty easy. We're just filling in the sky to be yellow. It's a nice yellow color. The sky in the inspiration has an orange tinge to it. So if you liked that, you could add an orange tinge to it by having a little bit of red. That's totally fine too. All right. So we work usually in one area, we let it dry and then we kind of keep working our way down. I am going to let the yellow dry. I'm not going to touch it up there. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the green grass down here on the bottom next, which would be thrilling. So to make green, if you don't have a green handy, it's blue and yellow mixed together. And this is like a vibrant, like lime grass green, which is kind of fun. So I'm going to put a little bit of blue on my plate. And blue and yellow will make green. The ratio is like 75% yellow with some blue. So I'm just going to take a scoop of this yellow, bring it over here and just bring in, here, I'll move this over here so you can see it, and bring in my blue to my yellow. And you need to make enough of this so you don't run out. paint the bottom. So you might need to grab a little bit more paint. Woo! Make enough of this green. Ooh, that's a lot of yellow. Ooh, wait, I'm not gonna run out of paint tonight. All right. So I'm finding a green that I like, right? So this is the goal of this step, is like, what color do you want your grass to be? The more blue you add, the darker it'll get. The more yellow, the brighter it will be. So I always try to slow us down to find the colors that we like when we're blending. Blending colors is pretty powerful. If you slow down to appreciate the process, it's become a very therapeutic part of these classes for me. If you take the time to do it. All right. So this is it's grass green. You can make a choice if you want to make it more yellowy, you can. If you want to add a little white to lighten it, you can too. I want mine to be pretty punchy, but I added a little white. So we'll just see what happens here. All right, that's not bad, not bad. You're just gonna paint everything on the bottom, this green color. If you have a rock wall, you're gonna do it below the rock wall. So for me, I have a rock wall in here. This is just gonna be long. This is just basic coverage. I'm gonna come right up to this pencil line. Nice smooth brush strokes. I'm not going to use water to move this around too much. If you want to, you can. Sometimes in these classes, we dip our brushes in a little bit of water to move the paint around. You're welcome to do that if you want to. If you don't want to, you don't have to.
I have a question, Megan.
Sure.
On the inspiration, it looks like a piece of it, the shadow of the sheep,
Yeah.
is a real dark green. Or can we choose not to do that? Or are we not doing that? Or
That would be at the very end if we do that.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So I was gonna try adding that. If folks don't want to do it, you don't have to. But it would be at the end. So we're just kind of doing the full grass first. And then if folks wanted to add a shadow below the sheep, once the sheep are done, we could do that. But that's a good question. Yep. So I'm doing long, smooth, horizontal brush strokes. I kind of go left, right, left, right. You can try to keep your brush on one, from one side to the canvas all the way to the other to have nice smooth brush strokes. Totally up to you. Everyone has a little bit of a different process. I'm going for a nice clean grass coverage here. We can always add in texture after, but nice basic coverage is good. We're going to go all the way down to the bottom. And I want to thank you all again for being here. It's so great to see you. I will be posting our May dates and inspirations soon. In May, we're painting 2 ducks. They're incredibly adorable. And we're also doing, I'll give you a little sneak peek. We're also doing this Hobbit house.
Oh, fun.
Oh, cute.
Was so much fun. It may or may not have taken me 2 hours, ladies. But it's about the amount of detail that you want to add. So this Hobbit house was really fun, kind of tucked into the mountains. So that was a really fun one. So we'll be doing that in May as well.
I love that Hobbit house.
It's like dreamy. It's like you can kind of turn the scene into anything you want it to be. So I will be that will be available in our May class, in our May schedule. I'm also having a child in May. Kim may or may not know, neither Sandra, but I am 34 weeks pregnant and baby's coming mid-May. So I'll be prepared with class recordings if we are unable to do a live class. So just keep that in mind. We'll still have, I'll have plenty of painting content for you if I am unable to teach a live class. All right.
Are you taking time off, Megan? I mean, Obviously, you
I
have
am
said
not
to-
doing I'm not doing private or in-person classes, like team building classes, which is kind of the other side of my business.
Yeah.
So no, I'm from a Patreon public class perspective. You all will continue to have classes from me. I will be teaching in June again, like live classes as well. So there shouldn't be too much of a disruption for the Patreon audience. I am teaching a class for AARP New Hampshire in May, May 8th. So baby shouldn't be here yet. If it's here, then I'll figure it out. But we'll go from there. But baby shouldn't be here yet. So I'll be teaching the live AARP New Hampshire class.
That's a cute one for that. The little, what is it, a little goat?
Oh, yeah, we're doing the goat. Yeah.
Yeah, that's adorable.
Yeah, that one's gonna be really fun. Yep. So we're really just painting all of this green grass right here, and then we're just gonna let it dry. So I have basic coverage. We're gonna add some more texture. We're gonna add some little flowers and grass detail. So just basic green down here is all you need. If you wanted to be fancy and add in other colors, you're absolutely welcome to. I'm keeping it simple tonight. And my green grass isn't like a lime green, like the inspiration, but my sheep, my white sheep with the black heads and the black legs are gonna stand right out. And that's all that's important, you know? All right. So I'll give everybody a minute to do the green, but we're gonna move our way up to the Blue Mountains. So now our top is dried. And we'll flip up and we'll work on our blue as our next step. So I always clean my brushes along the way. During the classes, you're always welcome to use whatever brush sizes that you're most interested in. Everyone kind of knows what their favorites are that they have at home. So I'm never going to tell you not to use something, but I will always show you what I'm using if you need guidance or would like that perspective. Right. So since these mountains are fairly small in size, I have two. I have blue 1 and blue 2. Well, I'm going to erase those names because I don't need them to be there anymore, do I? That helped though for planning, right? So it's always, you can always do that if you ever want to, just kind of help plan that out. And then I have two ranges. I have 2 layers, and I'm just going to erase this line gently so I can see where my 2 blue layers are. The mountain that is further in the back is going to be a lighter blue mountain. So I'm just going to find a small brush of choice. This is kind of a 1/4 inch flat tip brush. I'm going to make a light blue of choice. So whenever you're ready, join me, but there's no rush. I'm going to take a little bit of blue paint and a little bit of white, and I'm going to make a light blue. And if you want this to be like a light bluish green, you can make it a light bluish green. Just take a minute to find a color that you like, right? So it's not settling for the first color you always come up with. Sometimes it's fun to mix in. I added a little green to this. Kind of just changed the tone just a bit. It's really pretty. It's kind of like a country blue now. It's kind of neat. And then you're just going to do the mountain in the distance. And fill that in. And these are solid colored mountains tonight. I'm not doing any fancy dimension or snow or shading to these mountains. I'm just not tonight. I'm going to keep it simple. Sometimes we do a lot of texturing work on our mountains. These are going to be more flat in color. And I'm doing that intentionally tonight. So finding a light blue that you like. I loved mixing a little green with this. It's still very blue, but it just changed the color just a little bit. And I'm giving my brush a little wiggle along this ridge line just to make it look a little bit more natural. Because these are my mountainous mountains, right? Not my rolling hills. So rolling hills, you can have nice flat. But if you want to do mountains, you can do like a little kick up, a little bit of a wiggle with your brush. It takes practice, but many of you have done great with just experimenting with how you hold your brush, how you create additional textures on ridge lines. Nice, really simple. You need to get a tiny brush to kind of get into a smaller area. Just grab another brush when you need to. So I'm gonna grab a little brush. I got a little bit of a tail here of my mountain. Just gonna get a little closer here. Go. Smaller brush will allow you to do some of this natural ridge line too. So you're welcome to do a little bit of a natural ridge line with a smaller brush if you wish. So right now, I'm only planning on doing 2 blue mountains. So if anybody's doing more, that's totally fine, right? We're all making our own choices tonight. But what this next step is once you have your first lighter mountain in, you're just gonna make a shade that's a little bit darker. You can have like a little bit of a purple tinge to it, which might be fun. You could just go a little, more blue. So I have this second mountain over here. It's gonna be just a shade darker. So I'm going to take this blue that I have a little bit left, and I'm just going to take a little bit of blue on my brush, and I'm just going to make it a shade darker. I'm just adding a little bit more blue to it. And it is a little purpley. So if you wanted to make it a little purpley, which Jenny is probably considering at this point, you can always take a little bit of red, put a little bit of red on your plate, especially if you're going to do any orange, you can put some red on your plate right now. And you don't need very much paint in these classes. You'll learn that pretty quickly. But I could take a little tiny corner of red. See how much that is? It's not very much at all. And I can kind of put it nearby, and I can bring it in, and I can add a little bit of a purple tinge to this. And this kind of makes it a little bit more, see that color? It's so beautiful. A little tiny bit of red. It's not going to make it purple, but it's going to change the tone of the blue. Isn't that pretty? Kind of like a periwinkle a little bit. And it's a little darker than that. And that's exactly what I wanted. So I always encourage you in these classes to play around with mixing colors. There is no risk. And you might come up with a really beautiful color that's like, wow, this is exactly what I was looking for. Or this was not exactly what I was looking for. You've got to keep mixing. But there's a lot of benefits to experimenting with blending your own colors. Your picture will really come to life when you get excited about your colors to bring into your composition. Look at that. Isn't that a beautiful color? Nice and soft. It's because I took a whole minute to play with colors to mix them around. And this one's just going to get tucked in this layer. And I'm just going to stay within my guidelines. You're probably seeing why now I did my guidelines in pencil. Just, it's assuring me that I know what the end product is going to be. Sometimes it's fun, flying from the seat of your pants and doing lots of layers. You can totally do that. But sometimes it's fun to just do a little bit of light sketching. Kind of helps you figure out what you want to do. And again, everybody's artistic approach is different. Nice. These kind of look like the White Mountains a little bit. That White Mountains, the Mount Washington hotel that we did, what was it, last year? That was pretty intense.
Yeah.
That was a really detailed class, but it was really fun. It was very rewarding, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was very purple.
Purple? The yours came out purple?
On my mountains. I think.
Oh.
Did they
Oh, right
purple
now?
on that one? No, on the Mount Washington or no?
Oh, did they come out purple? That's so funny.
Yeah, I'm
I
not a
don't
big
remember.
fan of the purple mountains.
That's funny. All right. So I want you all to go at your own pace here. I'm doing solid mountain color, follow the colors as you go down. So for me, I'm just going to follow my intuition here of what we're doing and why. I'm gonna erase the next hill I have is a green hill. I don't know. I mean, I could do it as a blue. I think I'm just gonna do it as a green. And then I have green and green. I might put in, and then I have a blue lake that I'll kind of put into this middle space. And I'm erasing my text along the way here, but I'm going to do a green of some sort. The green, I could match the grass green right now and put it up on this tier because visually it will help tie everything together. And then I could do like a darker color green, maybe for my second green tier. So you could either go lighter or darker based on the number of tiers you have for each color. So it's your choice. Since I have some of this green paint right here, I'm going to do a green rolling hill with this same grass green color, and that will tie it visually to the large area below. If I ever wanted to change this, it's not going to be too late to change it either. So it's always okay just to start somewhere, and acrylic dries pretty quickly, so it's okay to make modifications along the way. Which, Kim, is a bit different from your oil work in the past. Acrylic is, it dries quickly, but you can always paint on top of it. Kim has done oil painting in her past, and it's a little different, quite different. All right. So don't forget to breathe and enjoy the process along the way. If there's any questions, let me know. Just work on your layers at your own speed. Stay within your lines, or if you wanted to change your lines, you can. It's always okay to change your thoughts and your position along the way. It's art, it's constantly changing, right? Your ideas and what your inspiration, something new you might want to add. Just be open to change when you paint. I think that's a really important thing that we don't always talk about. We talk about the evolution of art, but we don't always talk about things changing. Things can change. They absolutely can change. And you can always change things back too, let's be honest. That's the process. So I'm doing nice, long, smooth brush strokes. Based on the quality of paint you're using, you may want 2 coats in some areas. I'm using a really basic craft paint tonight. So, and my green is a little, I don't want to say it's on the thin side, but I'm just having fun. I'm not going to be selling this artwork or anything. So I'm just here having fun. But if you ever want to do 2 coats to kind of give it more of a solid approach, you can. If you want to add in any extra lightness or darkness into these hills, you can. I'm not going to do that tonight just due to time. But you can always add darker or lighter colors. So like a darker green or a lighter green to your hill here if you wanted to emphasize lightness or shadows or shading. So if you wanted to play with that in any of these layers, you can. Again, I am not doing that intentionally tonight, but you are welcome to. Now, I have 2 tiers of green hills here. I'm not going to do this second green rolling hill as my grass green. I'm mixing another green with a little bit of blue in it because, hey, why not? If I don't like it, I can always change it. So let's just see how this goes. It's pretty bluish green, but just take a minute to figure out if you're doing a second green color or doing another blue or whatever. Just take your time to find another color and make enough of it so you're not going to run out. And these are pretty thin layers, so you're not going to need too much. But this is more of an emerald green versus a grass green, which is enough differentiation for the viewer to see the differences in layers. And if you wanted to do an orange layer here, you're welcome to add in orange. I might do one of the pause in my seat, lean back and observe to figure out if I want to add orange anywhere. I do like the orange, just got to figure out where I want to add it. I might add it in the middle layer between my lake. My lake is next. Blue lake and my rock wall. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. One layer at a time. But it's fun. I love taking the time to do all these mini layers. We don't always do long, thin layers like this in our classes. Not always, but sometimes we do. We do rolling hills, we do mountainous layers. But lots of layers like this is really fun. So there's a darker green, right? They are starting to match and it's creating the scene, which is kind of fun. Don't hesitate to grab a smaller brush to get into like some smaller areas, like to extend your hill over a little bit. You could do that. If you need to erase any of your pencil lines along the way, feel free. And for me, I'm just thoughtfully working my way down. So I have a blue water here next. It's a lighter blue color. I'm going to use a smaller brush. So again, just go at your own pace. I'm going to use a blue that I have. You can use the same tone as above. I added a little bit of white to this, so it's going to be a little bit different, but it will still look like water. And there's little boats on this water, which is really fun. We'll see how ambitious I get to paint little sailboats in the distance on this after. But there's always fun things you can add in like that. Like sometimes people like to put little islands within a body of water or a boat. This is really tiny in the distance. This is like a lake in the distance kind of thing. So if you're going to paint a boat, it's got to be pretty small, like a triangle for a sail kind of thing.
And we want to put those in after the lake is dried, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So that would be a secondary detail to do on top. Yeah. But I love these in the distance water features. They're quite satisfying personally.
Yeah.
And it adds a layer of complexity that's not that difficult to include. It brings your scene to life a little more. It adds a little bit of curiosity of the layers. It's really based on your composition and what your intent is, right, as an artist. And you can be really curious. You can be really can inspire others by like tucking in fun little things here and there. Wait, it's fun to tease people. Like, oh, do you see that boat in the distance? Isn't that neat? Jenny, you're so clever. Look at that boat you added, right? Jean does that a lot with hers too. She adds these little details here and there, and it's just you all just blow me away by your creativity. So I applaud you for just like going for it sometimes.
I do like little details. I'm very detail orientated.
Oh, just wait until these sheep and their heads and their ears. Oh my gosh, it's gonna be fun. They're gonna be tilting their heads sideways and they're gonna have little faces. Oh my gosh, it's gonna be a riot. But we're creating the scene to put them in. And you can determine on how many details you want to add tonight, you know, with all these layers. And we did the sketching, right, for you to kind of plan on how much you want to do. But it's all about personal preference, always. And that's kind of what separates these classes from others, because I'm never going to have you paint the exact same thing that I do. Art is a very personal activity. And the more you can be yourself and incorporate your own ideas, the better it's going to feel for you, right? Like it's a personal experience, and I'm here just to guide you and support you along the way. But it's really fun to just do your own thing and get inspired by others, because everyone's work is just so different. All right, so there's my lake. It looks like a lake in the distance. Terrific. I have a green grass line underneath my lake. I'm gonna let my lake dry before I do a tiny green grass line, but I have green rock wall. I may do my gray rock wall next, just to paint it. Because it's away from everything else. So I'm gonna erase my text of rock wall. And I'll do my two little green, or maybe I'll even do my orange. I'll tuck in orange somewhere in here. I'm not sure where yet. But I'll maybe paint the base color of my rock wall, which is a gray. And I'll use a black or like a dark gray to do some of the rock detail. So I'm gonna do a gray rock wall next. So I'll need a little bit of black. So I'm just sharing my process with you. You may not be here yet. You may be working on a totally different layer, which is fine. I'm just working my way through these layers just like you are. So a little bit of black, mixing it with white will give you gray. And you can use, I'm going to use like this, it's like a 1/4 inch flat tip brush to get my rock wall going. And I think I have, I don't know how much white paint I have here. I'm going to kind of grab it from up top. A little bit of black goes a long way. Yep. Was there a question? Folks are doing good. All right. I'm going to add a little bit more white to my plate. Is anybody else doing a rock wall? I think Susan might be.
I am.
Everybody's doing one. Jean, are you going to do a rock wall tonight? Or Kim or Sandra?
Eventually, I'm not there.
Eventually. You know what? That's a very good answer, Jean, because you can put a rock wall over any darn rolling hill or any field after.
Hi from Sandy and Dorian Gwen. I'm doing a rock wall.
Oh, Sandy and Dorian crew. So this is the group of ladies. I love it. My Friday night lady paint crew. All right. Love it. Dory, I always forget you're hiding behind that Sandra profile. So I'm so glad the ladies are together tonight. I love this rock wall. So I'm just finding a base color gray that I like for this rock wall. You could go a little darker, but I'm going to stay on like the medium tone side. And I'm just painting this across. I am going to put that darker detail in. So if the lighter you want to make your rock wall, that's fine too. But it's just a gray color. I like the rock wall. I think it'll be a nice touch. I think it'll be a nice touch for tonight. And I really liked writing out those layers. Like that was a really helpful part of the process for me tonight. I don't know if anybody else tried that, but it kind of helped me plan out what I wanted to put and where. And I'm just gonna do long, smooth brush strokes. You can go right up against the green. And this is about, I'll get my ruler out. You can see how tall my rock wall is. Yeah, it's about a 1/2 inch, less than 3/4 of an inch tall. But you can decide how tall or how short you want this rock wall to be. Absolutely up to you. I'm just doing smooth brush strokes. The rock wall on the top is going to have a smooth line, and it's going to have a smooth line on the bottom. And it doesn't have to be perfectly straight across, right? We're in Ireland. This scene can be wherever you want it to be. This is a rock wall. It is not perfectly even. For the rock wall detail, you could use black paint with or a dark gray paint with a tiny brush. You could use a black ink pen. You could use the tip of a Sharpie to do the rock detail. You can choose, right? It's okay to bring in other supplies for your art. You don't always have to just paint. This is your piece, so you get to decide how you want to do your accent details. I think for the windows of the Mount Washington Hotel, when we did that last year, I think I used a black ink pen for those windows. I couldn't imagine painting those little windows in. That would have been really hard, unless you have a really tiny brush.
And steady hand.
Yeah, and windows are so square, aren't they?
Yep,
They were so square, so I think that was a better solution for me. So
I
you
think
just
that's
can
what I
do-
did too, was use
Yeah.
a
And you could
tab.
use a black ink pen too, like not even like a black, you could use a black gel pen, but you could
Yeah.
use like a black ink pen too. That worked, I think, fine. Just trying to remember. It does-
Yeah, I use both when I'm trying to do detail the next day.
Yep,
I'll sometimes use a gel and I also have an ink pen too.
yeah. It's fun to try both, that's for sure.
Mhm.
All right, so there's my rock wall. Incredibly fancy here, ladies and gents. It's just gray and it's uneven in all the right ways. All right, so I'm gonna let that dry. And I want you just to finish your layers, right? So you can see my scene. It's really coming to life. I have a field where my sheep will be. I have my layers. I have some blue water, which is fun. And then I told myself I was going to put in some greens here. So what I might do is I might do some oranges in like this bigger green area here, and I might do green up against the lake. So where I wrote green here in this layer, I'm going to probably there's like a two-tone orange thing going on, which I really like. So I'm going to mix an orange, a dark and a light orange. And just always check yourself. Say, am I using the right brushes? So I'm going to grab a little yellow sorry, yellow with a little bit of red is how you make orange. So pick one orange color. This is like I like how they did like a two-tone approach for the orange here. It kind of goes dark, light, dark, kind of like layered across. So I'm going to be a little experimental with how I do my orange. I might do some like stripes in the field, like long and skinny. I'm not sure yet, but this is where you can be a little playful if you want to.
I think it's supposed to look like different sections of
Of like a hayfield or something.
yeah.
Agreed.
Growing
Yeah.
areas.
Exactly. So I'm going to try to do that. I'm going to do dark, light, dark, and I'm going to give it a little bit of an angle as I'm filling it in, just to see what happens. So I'm doing the darker orange first. Stay within my lines here. It also depends on how much room you have here. And this is above my rock wall. So you can decide what details you want to use and where. I like the orange. Orange and blues and greens are all colors that get along well visually. There we go. Just take your time. Finding a brush that has a nice point on the end that you feel like you can control how you're applying the paint is one of the most important things. If you need to switch brushes, switch brushes. That will be one of the best things you can do. We develop relationships with our brushes in these classes. You may even name them. No, I don't name them, but I'm being funny. You get to know how to use them in different ways, and you get to know if one is just not working for you. You're like, you and I are done right now. I'm gonna grab another one, you know? Especially as your brushes age with time. You're like, okay, I'm gonna throw you away. We've had some good times, but I need to get another new one out.
They get little weird like hairs sticking out of the very end going
I
up
know.
angles, don't they?
Yeah, but you can always grab a pair of scissors and cut those out,
Okay.
which is a nice thing. Like if you have
Yeah.
any that have strays on them, you can
Okay. That's
cut them
good.
out.
Yep, good idea.
Yeah. So I'm doing light orange, doing dark orange, light orange, and then dark. So I'm doing kind of my second side over here with my dark orange. And I'll make like a creamsicle color to put in the middle of this field. This orange hayfield here that we're painting. So you can see how these layers are going to look kind of neat, right? And I did an angle a little bit for the cut. And I don't really have any water on my brush. I'm just using kind of pure pigment of paint because I want that dense color. So far, so good. And in about at the top of the hour, 8 o'clock, we'll do our flip and reveal. So we'll do our show and tell. People can show off their work if you're interested, so we can see how different everybody's is, and we'll continue on from there. But keep working your way on your layers. I'm gonna mix a lighter orange next. Just use your eye, find a color that's just gonna work for you. A little bit more white. You can play with bringing in a little bit more yellow. Keep that pesky green and blue away from this orange, because if you put any blue or green near this orange, it's going to turn brown, and then your world is just going to be turned right upside down. And I would not want that to happen for you. And I almost just did. I almost just grabbed a little green. That would have been real bad. Really bad. All right. So I found a nice, it's kind of like a muted creamsicle color. It's going to be just fine for my mid tier, like my mid-tone orange for this field. It's a nice subtle color. And I'm just doing solid colors. I'm not playing around with depth in these areas tonight. No depth tonight for me. I'm just doing kind of flat colors. But you can do depth color using darks and lights. If you wanted to bring any of this to life, you could. I might do like a dark green here in between my lake and my orange for contrast. That could be a fun thing to try. But just do one thing at a time. We're doing well. We're still sticking to our rules of we're just filling in the background first, and then we can have fun with all those details in the foreground after. Whether it's a boat or a family of sheep. You can start thinking about your sheep, about how many you might want. Maybe it's based on the number of people in your family. You could do and how many babies or grandbabies you have, or how many you want, or or you could just do a herd, right? You could just do 6 sheep and a couple little ones. Or if you wanted just to do, an odd number, odd numbers always look a little more even to the eye. If you need to stretch your paint, just put a little bit of water in your paint and mix it around. I almost ran out of this second orange, but with a little water and I mix it around, I can stretch that paint pigment to give me just enough. And I'm going to do for my final tier, my final layer, I'm going to do a dark green here at the base of this lake. I think that'll be some nice contrast. And I may just do like a dark bluish green just to see what happens. You don't always need to use black to create darker colors. And that's something that we do more and more of experimenting with, because a lot of professional artists try not to use black at all. We do in these classes, but it's always fun to experiment with mixing darker shades without black itself. So I'm doing, this came out to be like a really pretty, like dark bluish green, which will be nice in contrast below my lake and above my orange field. So pick and choose what colors you want your layers to be. At the top of the hour, we will show off our work. 4 minutes. So don't rush, take your time. If you don't want to show off your work, you don't have to. Don't forget to breathe. Don't forget to smile. You are having fun. Art can be so serious. We can take it so serious, can't we? This is where we can just enjoy the process. These layers are so therapeutic, especially when we had sketched them up front. and less worrying, little less worrying. Because let me tell you, ladies, I have done some really ugly layered mountain pictures. I am not proud to admit that. Actually, I am, because nobody's perfect, but I feel like I have been more successful with doing a little sketching with placement with mountain layering versus flying from the seat of my pants. But we can all make those choices. I am just following this lake. I love the lake that I added. I may even put in a tiny thin line of this up above just to tie it all together with this darker color, but we'll see. So there's enhancements you can make. You'll see along the way that you might want to add a thin line of this color here or whatnot to kind of tie it all together visually. All optional, but do what feels right here. I want you to be happy with your layers in the next few minutes here. And if you want to take more time, of course, take time, but in the top of the hour, we're going to transition. This layer came out pretty bumpy, so I'm going to smooth it out in some areas. So lean back in your chair. You'll figure out if you need to make any modifications. For me, this came out a little bumpy, so I'm just going to do some smooth brush strokes along the edge. Steady hand, right? Someone said that. Yes, steady hand is important. It's a little tricky. Always, no matter your age, steady hand is hard. There we go. It's a little bit more smooth. And I hope you're all enjoying this so far. I think this is such a beautiful scene. So there's my rock wall. My rock wall looks like it's kind of blending in a little bit, but I'm going to come in and do that detailed work like we talked about after. And I'm going to probably do the detailed work before the sheep. So I can put my sheep over some of the rock wall. There'll be some overlap with the sheep. Okay. I may do a thin, dark line. This may or may not be relevant to what you all are doing, but I'm going to put a thin, dark green line, and I have water on my brush at the base of this hill. Above my lake, just for a little bit of extra contrast. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. I'm doing it just to draw my eye to the bottom of this mountain, bottom of this hill. So I just added a really thin, it's a watery dark green. It just kind of bring my eye to the base of this mountain. Optional. And I may go all the way across. Let's see. I might as well. I'm going with a really light hand across all the way. So I did that just because I wanted to see that lake line. And I may even do a line, this dark green line at the base of my rock wall as well. For a little bit of contrast at the base of the rock wall. So optional, but I have water on my brush with my darker green paint that I used for that tier. It's like a bluish green. And I'm just doing a little bit of an outline on the bottom of the rock wall just to kind of ground it. This is a little bit of shading or a shadow. We could spend easily 2-3 hours in tonight's class. We are not going to do that. We'll do the basic details, but if you wanted to spend more time after, which many of you may, you usually do. Okay, take your time there. And we're at the top of the hour, 2 minutes past. Shame on me. This is what happens when you get caught up in your work. I will put my paintbrush down. I'm just going to fix one thing really quick. All right. And I'm going to unpin myself and I'm going to click gallery view within Zoom. And I'll check in with all of you, my friends. If anybody's interested in sharing off your work, Dory and Sandra and team are having a party over there. How's it going so far, everybody? There's Jeans. Nice. Look at these layers, ladies. Nice. Beautiful. Jenny, Big Mountains. There's Dory's. I think that was Dory on the side. Very nice. Kim's beautiful size mountains. Great layering. See how different everybody's are? So different. It's terrific. I may even add like a little orange sun in the sky. You all can consider that. I know some of you are still working on these layers, so keep up the good work. But please let me know if you need anything. I might take a small brush. I might make a little bit more orange paint. But I want folks to be happy with your layers before we do our sheep and all that. Let's see, I'm just going to make a little bit more orange. If you need second coats anywhere, feel free to add second coats. I'm just going to add a second coat on my orange because my orange is pretty thin, and a second coat on my orange will really make it stand out. And it's a little different of a color. It's okay. You could put up like an orange sun or even like a yellow sun kind of coming up over the mountains, or you could put one in the sky. You could add clouds in your sky. These are all the details that you all can decide on what you want to do or not. I don't know what I'm going to do for my sun yet. I do think an orange sun would look good though. Just got to figure out where I want to put it, how big I want it to be, and if I want it to be a full sun in the sky, or if I want it to be tucked behind the mountains. All these choices that we get to make as an artist. It's kind of fun and thrilling. Let's see. I might do like a little, I'm just going to be daring and just go for it because, you know, I'm just doing it tucked behind here. Use a small brush if you're going to go for the sun. I'm just tucking it behind this blue mountain. And it's going to be like a little half orange sticking out. I'm not going to do any sun rays or anything. Just doing a little sun kind of coming up over the crest. And if you're going to do a sun, make sure you have a brush that you're in control over. Very important. You might want 2 coats. I'm just going to let that dry. I think that works. And then I'm going to start to think about my rock wall. You really need to have a thin, tiny brush to do your rock wall, to have it be small. I have multiple black pens in front of me. Let me just see if any of these would work for tonight. Let's see. Oh, this might be a good one. So I have this fine liner soft grip, like black ink pen. I'm going to use this, ladies and gents, just because it's what I have and I want to enjoy this. If you wanted to use a small, tiny point of a brush, you can. If you have one, use it. I am going to do the rock wall. I'm going to take 5 minutes and do it because I want to be able to put my sheep on top of it. So at this point in tonight's class, you can use a black ink pen. You can use sometimes Sharpies are fine. They have a nice fine point if you have a Sharpie in your house. If you want to use the tip of a brush, if you have a nice fine point, just use that. That's totally fine. You could probably use this. I think I'm just going to use the pen though. So just do your thing. And I'm putting little rocks basically on this rock wall. So I'm just going to start on one side to another. And I'm just going to draw little rocks. And this, I don't know how long this is gonna take, but I'm just gonna go for it bravely. And then it's gonna be little rocks and big rocks, all tucked in. I'm gonna do a big rock and I'm gonna do a little rock. I'm gonna do a big rock and a little rock. And these are coming out to be a little bit more gray, which is fine. These are so tiny. I don't know why I went so small. Look how tiny they are. This is gonna take me forever. What I'm gonna do is I'll continue the rock wall over here in the middle. And this pen actually isn't working that well for me, believe it or not. Let's see what the tip of the Sharpie could do. It's kind of, oh, there we go. So Sharpie might be a better choice. Maybe I'll do a line on the top of the rock wall first. Black Sharpie works fine too. It's actually a little more dark in color, which is good. You want the paint to be dry before you do your rock wall. I'm doing a line above the rock wall and a line below just to kind of highlight it. My gray is a little sticky, but it's okay. But I want to be able to put sheep on top of this. That's why I'm doing this now. So I'm just going to just piece in big rocks and little rocks. And I'm going to be very abstract here. Because this is just a detail. We had a rock wall installed at our house. I don't know, 3 years, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And it's fascinating to watch a landscaper piece together long, skinny stones and big stones. And it's just, it's really masterful. So I am just making this into a rock wall here. Your rocks can be bigger than mine. I probably have 4 rocks layered on top per se. My gray paint is sticking in areas. Try doing some long skinny rocks tucked into your rock wall, not just like big ones. Makes it look natural, having some bigger rocks, some round rocks, and some long skinny kind of pancake style rocks. And I'm just doing lines, kind of connecting them. And this is just fine. I could have easily done this if I had a nice fine tip brush. But again, the process of creating is experimenting, and you figure out what you like and what you don't like. And I started in the middle because I'm going to put some sheep overlapping in the middle. So I'm kind of putting this in here to let it dry, but you can have some big rocks tucked in with some smaller rocks. Remember those long, skinny pancake rocks? And the reason I started in the middle is because even if you just do the middle section, that's like where the sheep's head might be overlapping. That's why I started here. So even if I just do the middle section of rocks, or even if you do the middle section of rocks, you can always finish the exterior parts of the rocks after if you need to. But we're doing good on time, so no worries. So think of like little snowball sized rocks. Then you have maybe some big rocks tucked in. You want to tuck in a rock that looks like a heart. That could be kind of cute, tucked into your rock wall. I have a friend who sees hearts in objects wherever she goes. Maybe it's a rock or maybe it's a patch of mud, and it's quite fun. She sees hearts all over the place. So I just tucked in a little heart rock into my wall for her. Right here. It's so cute. Who can find the heart rock in my wall? Isn't that cute? It's like in the middle-ish on the right side. You could tuck in a couple heart rocks, who cares, right? Hopefully I don't put a sheep's head over that rock. They probably will, but I'll try not to. And I love putting in these big rocks on the wall because those are the satisfying ones, right? Takes up a lot of space. I'll bring it a little closer so everybody can see how this rock wall is coming about. And I'll zoom down. This might be helpful for some of you. My fancy technology here. Let's see here. Let's move this over. It's not even down all the way, is it? Yeah, I don't think I can go any lower, but that might be helpful. So the reason we're doing the rock wall is because we're going to do the sheep next. And with the sheep, we're going to do white bodies first. So we can start talking about our sheep. We'll do white bodies first, and then so you can figure out how big you want your sheep to be. And we'll be centering our herd like in the middle, which will be fun. I'm gonna do another heart rock over here on this side because hey, why not? If you need to like wipe off the tip of your Sharpie, if it's getting any paint on it, or if it just needs a break. You may not even be using a Sharpie, you're probably using paint brushes like good folks. Let's see, let's go over here. Sharpies are always nice things to have in your studio, just in case. Sometimes in our classes, I've done certain designs, like we did a love inspiration in February, and I outlined all the text and all of my fun Valentine's Day graphics with a black Sharpie after class. And it was so much fun because it kind of made it look like more of like an illustration a little bit after the painting. So it's always fun, you know, if you're doing something that's just like for yourself and you're experimenting, it's always fun to just play with using different supplies and seeing what effects you like, you know, especially if you're not selling your artwork, even though, you know, a lot of folks do mixed media and sell it. So, but it's always fun to think outside the box. For our last class in April, I am going to use watercolors. So it's like a beautiful spring flower pattern that I'm going to be painting. I'm not sure how symmetrical it will be or not yet. Haven't decided, but I am going to be using watercolors for the April 21st. It's a Sunday class. It's in a couple weeks. But if you are interested in using watercolors with me, you're welcome to. If you don't want to, you don't have to. But I am sharing that for awareness. I'm committing to doing that with you. If anybody needs recommendations on like watercolor supplies, I don't do a ton of watercolor, but I'm excited to do it with you as doing something different. I have supplies on hand, so I'm gonna be playful and try something new for that class. All right, so I have a rock wall. It has made it across. It looks a heck of a lot better now that it's done. I think some of you are probably starting to feel that way as you're working your way across, but I'll give you all a few minutes to play with that. And we won't move on to the sheep until everybody's ready. But I could think about my little sailboats, and there's like a little white house in the distance. I didn't even see some of these details in the inspiration. There's little orange sailboats, which I could get curious and I could try painting those in while everything's drying and you all are doing your rock walls. You do little tiny, two little orange sailboats, little triangles. That could be fun. Let's see here. Maybe put them over here. Kind of like a little long line. Triangle. we kind of have a little bit of a dark base, so I'm just doing a couple of tiny little. I did a couple of sailboats. They don't really look like sailboats. I will fix them. I did an orange sail with like a red base. My paintbrush was a little wet, so it didn't give me the crisp detail that I was looking for. See here. And these sailboats are kind of tall and lean. They're like tall rectangles, tall masts, those tall beams going up. Not bad, not bad. I'll bring it a little closer so you can see it once they're done. With a little bit of a red line at the base. Okay. Sort of sailboats. There's my sailboats. They're very fourth grader, but they look just fine. It's kind of a fun little element. But I'll check in with folks once you are done with your rock walls. Again, it was a really fun detail. I'm glad I added the rock wall. I used the tip of a Sharpie just for awareness. My little black ink pen wasn't working very well. But I used the tip of a Sharpie and it worked. I tucked in a couple of heart rocks along the way. There's one right there. There's one over there. So fun. And I put a thin black line at the bottom of the rock wall, and I put a thin black line at the top of the rock wall. And we'll do our sheep in a few minutes. I want to make sure I don't rush folks with that rock wall. How's it going over with the Dory crew? You ladies need a couple more minutes for the rock wall. You can give me a thumbs up if you're ready for the sheep. You tell me.
Ready for the sheep.
Sheep
Okay,
is
cool. Jean's ready for the sheep. Susan, are you good for the sheep? Jenny? Kim? Thinking about it? Okay, cool. Thanks, ladies. I appreciate that. Okay, so what do we need for the sheep? We need white paint. Imagine that. So the sheep are going to have some gray on them too, but we're going to start, well, we could do gray sheep. Let's do light gray sheep and we'll do white as an accent on top. How about that? So we'll do light gray sheep. And you're going to want a brush that you can have good coverage. I'm going to use this flat tip, kind of a 1/4 inch flat tip brush. And I'll zoom this back up. There we go. Okay, so sheep placement is very important, ladies. Susan was asking earlier around if you're going to do the shaded area on the underside of the sheep. The sheep gotta have to have legs under them. The legs aren't too big. But let's first start by making our light gray. And we'll use white as a highlight on the top of the back of the sheep. But let's make some light gray for the base color of the sheep. We've been waiting all night to do these sheep. It's going to be so exciting. And these sheep look like little snowballs. We could call them snowballs as we get going here. Their bodies are round like snowballs. And I want you to think smaller first for sheep size and then get bigger. So these sheep are going to be the size of like, think of like a $50, right? Like my paint cap. See how big that is? It's like a $50 size. What I'm going to have you do is, we'll talk about placement in a minute, but these sheep are going to be just below the rock wall. That's where their bodies are going to be. So I am just going to start by putting one sheep as a focal sheep, and I'm going to layer in more sheep behind it. Okay. So my first focal sheep is going to be right about here. And I'm just going to do a snowball about the size of a $50 and just start somewhere. And you can make it, it doesn't have to be perfectly round like a circle, but make a sheep's body, round snowball-like body. And it can be a little flat on the bottom, like where its feet are going to go. You can make these sheep as chubby or as thin as you want. Start with one and then say, is the size right? Does it need to be bigger? So we got to get to know our sheep a little bit here about how big we want them to be. Now we're going to put heads on top of these sheep. So I might make this one a little bigger. It's always better to start small. I always say that, but some of us, we just go big and it's okay. If I support big sheep, it's okay. But I'm going to put in a lot of sheep. So there's one body. Oh, and we're going to do a sheep next to it with his butt looking at us. That will be a fun one. So I'm doing one sheep. I'm going to do another sheep kind of behind this one. And the bottoms are going to be kind of in the same pleat. And this is going to be the sheep. His butt's going to be facing us, which is going to be really funny. And we'll use black paint to outline these sheep in their bodies too. So don't worry. But I'm just kind of doing another body next to it. This one's a little wider. This is its bum. It's kind of flat on the bottom. This is like the big boy over here. I just made him a lot bigger. Whew. So I want you to count and you can kind of work your way over. I'm going to have a herd of sheep. So one of the things I'm doing is I want to leave green space on the left and the right side of my herd. So I'm centering my herd intentionally. So if I want to keep my sheep in the middle of my painting, one of the things I can do thoughtfully is if this is my last sheep on the left, I can thoughtfully plan over here where I want to put my sheep, right? So if I want there to be equal amount of green space, which is I'm being a little precise and accurate, I can say, this is where I want my last sheep to be is right here. So I can do a body over here to say I want my sheep to be right here. My last one to be over here. Okay. And you can do it big or small, it doesn't matter. Now I'm gonna line my sheep up fairly straight across. We're putting legs underneath them, so you can kind of control like the leg line after. But this is where my last sheep is going to be on the right. And we'll put the babies in after. So we're gonna do all the adult sheep first, and then we'll tuck babies in front. So I have a whole bunch of sheep here. So I'm just gonna layer in some more of these cotton balls because they are it's happening here. So this sheep might be like leaning over. You can kind of look at the picture for the inspiration. Everybody's sheep is going to be different, but look at the positions of the sheep. Look at what they're doing. So this one's, again, the heads are going to help bring things to life a bit. So if you just want to layer in bodies like I am, you can. Maybe one body is a little higher, right, than another. Maybe one body's a little lower. Just stacking them in. We're going to use black paint to outline these bodies. Just do a base coat of white. If I decide to make my sheep bigger, I can always make them bigger. Mine are fairly small, but I'm going to put legs on them and heads on them. So you can again decide how big or small you want your sheep to be. I might have a little break in the herd and just have some green space maybe on the side of this one. Maybe my babies will be on either side of this sheep right here. Who knows? So it's okay if you don't want to just layer these snowballs across. You can have some space if you want to in between. Because you can always add another sheep in, right? This is just a starting place. Just a starting place. And see how it's a little flat on the bottom? That's where my legs are gonna go. So I'm trying to do an odd number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6. Trying to make a decision if I want to add more sheep in. I might have one more sheep like popping its head out in the back here. Might as well. Well, now I got to add another one in. Okay, I'll put a little butt in over here. Maybe this will be a little sheep popping its head out over here. So just roll with it. We're gonna do heads next. We'll do heads on top of all these, but just get some base bodies in. I created mine kind of uneven because they're kind of stacked all in. I have a little bit of a green gap. That's okay. And I'm gonna put my paintbrush down. And this is, I'll do a second coat because we're gonna add in some texture to our sheep. We'll add some darker gray in. We might add some white in, but we'll just do plain bodies first. Then we'll switch to our dark gray heads or our black heads. You can pick and choose. So we'll do heads and legs next. And then we'll let those sheep dry. And then if you want to tuck in babies, you can. Okay. All right. And we're doing good for time. So these sheep aren't going to take too long. I don't want to rush you. Find a small brush of choice to do the heads. And I'm going to probably mix like a dark gray for the heads. Doesn't need to be black. Dark gray would be good enough. Okay, this is where it gets interesting. So our heads are all going to be fairly the same shape, but the positioning of the ears will give us personality, and the tilting of the heads will give us personality. Okay. So we'll start easy. I'm going to do a head for this sheep first. It's kind of the shape of a skull. So half the head is going to be on the body, half the head is going to be off. And then he's got a bit of a mouth. So the top of the head is a little bigger. And I'll bring this down again. Now find a brush that you like. It's not entirely a skull. It's just the jaw gets a little more narrow, right? I'm going to find a smaller brush because the one I was using was too big. So check yourself if you need to find a smaller brush. If you have one, great. If not, then we'll make it work. So get the head in first, and then you can do these curious ears. And these ears are like little flower petals. They kind of wider in the middle. Oh man, these sheep are so darn cute. Pointy on the ear tip. Okay. And I'm going to outline the body with this dark gray too, just so I can see it. Could be a soft, gentle outline of the body. See that? I'm just doing like a gentle, soft outline. Because I have the color in my hand, might as well. And then you can just, you can go on, you can round the bottom if you wanted to. And then you can give it 4 little legs. So I don't think there's anything fancy about these legs. I think we're just doing 2 on the left, 2 on the right kind of situation. Your legs can be short and stubby, like this is a very hefty sheep. You could do longer legs. Totally up to you. This sheep next to him, his head is going to be in the middle of the body, and it's going to be, his head is tilted like he's curious. So I'll do a curious sheep next. There we go. All right. I'm going to mute for just a minute. Be right back. Sorry, my 4-year-old wanted to say goodnight. All right. So we are having fun with the positioning of the sheep's heads. I'm making a little bit more of this dark gray. The sheep's head, these ears, again, a little pointy, a little rounded towards the middle. This is a curious sheep. This one is. If you happen to do something you don't like, guess what? We can use white as our eraser here to reshape an ear, to reshape a head, doesn't matter. We'll add eyes on these sheep after. I'm also using gray here, so if anybody wants to use more of a darker black, you're welcome to do that. If you don't like where you put a sheep's head, paint over it. No big deal. No big deal at all. But I'm doing a head and and I might come in and make some of these darker. I'm using like a dark gray right now. There is a sheep on my far right. Its head is off the left side of the body. And he's just got one ear coming out because I'm looking at his butt. Remember, this was his butt. And he's gonna have legs. So 1, 2, 3, 4 legs. And he's got this little tail. It's kind of like a V. Let's see if I can do his tail. And his little butt curling under. Oh gosh. Never painted a sheep's butt before. So we'll see how this goes. No judgment, right? And I'm gonna outline the sheep. There's his little tail and his little butt. I'll put eyes on him. You're gonna do little white dots for eyes, but I'll show you what his little eye is gonna look like. There's his little eye, looking at me. So we're doing white dots for eyes. This is where personality comes into play here. And you probably could put a little bit of a black dot inside the white after too. But white eyes first and then black eyes. Little black dots if you can. So you can play with this. I'm gonna keep going. And we'll add texture to these sheep too, but I'm just getting the heads in. So some of the ears can be down too. So like if you want to do ears down for the sheep, you can. So I'm going to do the next sheep's head. And I'll do the ears pointing down on this one. So the positioning and the tilt of the head and the positioning of the ears can give your sheep some personality. And again, you can always clean up the shape of your sheep's head with a little bit of white after. Just mine are not perfect, so I can easily come in and with some white, just do some touch-ups after. It's not a big deal. And we can add in some texture for the sheep's body as well, so they don't look so boring. This ear needs a little bit of love. Oops. If your brush is too wet, the water will stream off of it, so just be careful. Okay, I'm gonna give my sheep some legs. The more straight the legs are, the better. My legs are pretty short. I'll come in and touch up that ear. But I have a herd here, awfully chubby sheep here happening over in Fairfield tonight. All right, I'm just gonna keep doing the heads and ears across. So you can see the positioning of the heads. Some heads are higher, some heads are lower. So I'm kind of alternating between higher heads and lower heads. Again, you can come all the way up on top of your rock wall if you need to kind of overlap, that's fine. And some ears can be straight out, like left and right, that's fine too. Some can be kind of pointing upwards, some can be pointing downwards. This is the personality piece. You need to mix more paint, mix some more paint for the legs, for the bodies, or for the heads. The legs are all fairly straight across. They don't really need to be like one longer than another. That didn't really look right for me. But again, check your brush that you're using. If you're doing any outlining, just use just the tip of the brush. So you have a nice thin line. That may or may not be easy to do. I know what it's like trying to create a thin line. It's not always possible, so don't worry about that. You can always go back to actually in with white paint and tweak that if you need to. This sheep, I got to put a head on this guy. I don't know where I'm going to put it. Maybe right here. And then let's see, maybe this one ear will be up. One ear will be over here. And some of this sheep's body is kind of behind the other one. And I'm just doing really simple kind of, these are cartoonish, right? These aren't like realistic sheep by any means. This is kind of a fun, whimsical sheep. I kind of have him popping out from behind this guy. So you can see I'm using my lines to kind of layer the sheep one on top of another. Okay. I have two more sheep that need heads over here. I did a lot of sheep. I don't know what I was thinking. Just they really want it to be a herd. I might put the positioning of the head on the one on the right. Maybe this positioning will be over here more on the right side. Like he's bending down a little bit, right? His head is lower. His neck is bending. Top of the head is a little bigger. Again, the jaw is a little more narrow. And I can figure out the positioning of the ears. So these ears are going to be kind of straight out. Maybe one will be up. We'll see. A little wider, gets pointier towards the edge. And legs. I'm just doing little sticks for legs. I'm keeping it really simple tonight. And then I'm doing basic outlining. I may not even put in baby sheep. We'll see how it goes here. Probably should. But I may not. We'll just see how my picture continues. I got one more. I may not even need baby sheep, but you all feel free to tuck baby sheep in here if you want to. I got to put in another head right here.
Megan, I'm gonna have to go, and I'm not quite done, but I'll send you a copy of my picture whenever I finish it. Thank
Sounds
you
great. Thank you for being here, Jean.
so much.
Take care. Can't wait to see it. Yeah, if anyone has to leave, I totally understand. Lots of details in tonight's picture. All right. So I'm just doing heads. I'm doing an outline around with the darker color, and I'm doing legs. And then we can put white dots in for eyes after. I did some just to show you, but we'll do that together as well. And I have a good little herd going here. All right. I have my heads, my legs, and my bodies in, or my legs in, and I'm going to just use a small brush and do white eyes for each of these. The eyes are, on the top part of the head. smaller side, do them small, and then I'm gonna put a little bit of a black dot in the middle. So you can always kind of reshape the eyes if you need to. I'm gonna do little black dots on the inside of those. And then we can play with some texture. So we'll do kind of one thing at a time. The heads and the ears and the legs are going to stay pure black or dark gray, whatever. We're not going to touch those too much. But we are going to add a little bit of dark gray to give this like a little bit of fur fuzziness to the bodies. The top side of the bodies that are closer towards our rock wall are going to stay lighter. We're actually going to add white to brighten the top side of the bodies, but we're going to add some woolly kind of context. So this is something you can do. I want you to just, it doesn't need to be a dark, dark gray, but I'm making a little bit darker of a gray than the body color. And with a small brush, I'm just going to kind of come in and add, and you can kind of go back and forth, but I'm going to add some wool-like texture. I'm going to try to, let's see if I can come down a little bit more for you. I'm just adding kind of little dots on like the bottom 2/3. You could do some like circular swirls, like if you want to do some rounded fluffiness. You can kind of mix it with the gray. We're just adding some texture in for the wool. So I'm kind of going back and forth between a darker gray and the base color. If you want to do most of the sheep, you can, but you can see I'm adding in a little kind of fun dabbing texture. Nothing crazy here, but this is just a little shading. The smaller the brush you have, the better here. Let me see what I got handy here. You can do curly cues here, ladies and gents. You can do any kind of sheep-like texture you wish. Fur-like texture. But you're gonna do like a darker gray or a slight upgrade of a darker gray, but in the same color. So you don't want it to be too different. Like I'm just doing some fun swirlies just to see what happens. Again, risk-free experimentation here with how we bring texture to our sheep. And I'm just having fun with it. And then we'll put a little bit of extra white on the top side of their shoulders and on the top side of their backs. But this is just where you can have fun, add a little texture. And I'm just doing a little bit of this and that. You could just do little tiny brush strokes. You can do a little circular curve. Have fun with it. Can't really mess this part up. You don't have to cover the entire space either. It's okay to see a little bit of the lightness from the base color of the sheep come through. That's okay. If it's too dark of a color, just add a little bit of white of the lighter color to it. No big deal. Uh-oh, I got some gray on his face. No big deal. I can get some black and put that right over. There's lots of ways. Let me repaint his face here. Whoopsie, sorry about that. You want to do a little bit of a light gray on the underside of the ear, you can too. Just doing a little light gray on the underside of the ear as like a little bit of depth. Totally optional. You can do it in the middle of the ear if you want. You can play with these details. You all know your way around this space. Each of you are talented. If you have any questions with any of these details, don't hesitate to reach out or ask. But I am having fun with some of the texturing. We're letting our eyes dry. We're going to add tiny little black dots on the inside of our eyes. And then we can talk about that shadow or that shading on the underside of these sheep if you wanted to try that. but there's also texture we could add in this field, right? So I told you this class could go on for a long time tonight. You can kind of pick and choose what additional details you might want to add. You can add more grass-like texture to this field. I am going to do the dark green shading under the sheep because I think that will look really nice. I'm being really open-minded to this texture for the sheep right now. I'm kind of just doing a little bit of white dabbing and a little bit of the dark gray just to see what kind of wool I can create. I'm kind of doing the darker gray and dabbing a little bit of white on top and smudging it together. This is risk-free experimentation at your best here. It's kind of fun. Kind of spotted a little bit, right? Some sheeps might have spots on them. If anybody's come up with a cool texture and wants to share it with the group, feel free to unmute yourself and share what texturing technique is working for you. Because everybody's doing their own thing here, and that's all good and dandy. But I think it's some good texture so far. Again, I mentioned if you want to grab a little bit of extra, just pure white paint, and on the top side of these sheep, give it a little bit of white. Kind of like when we paint clouds in our classes, we do a little bit of extra white on the tops of our clouds. On the top side of these sheep and around their heads, give them a little bit of extra white for this is where the light is hitting the sheep. So you might need to smudge it in with your finger to make it look natural. So I'm doing a little bit of white and I'm smudging it down with my finger. See that? So I'm going to do the top side here with some white paint. I'm just going to smudge this in gently. My finger's big compared to a little bit of white, and I'm keeping the black outlines there. I'm doing the white below the outline itself. But you can see how it's adding just a little bit of brightness to the top side of the sheep. I'm going to reshape this ear because it's a little wonky donkey. All right. Okay. Just adding a little bit of lightness at the top of the sheep. I'm going to smudge it in with my finger so the white kind of just fades right into that coat. Once your white eyes are dry, you can add a tiny black dot. You could use the tip of a Sharpie. You could use the round end of your paintbrush. I'll show you what that looks like. You're going to give your eyes a little bit more life. I'm just going to smudge this down. There's some good texture going on. My sheep. I'll use the round end of my paintbrush just to show you what that looks like with a little black dot on the middle. And this is where your Susan, if you want to make your sheep have their eyes could be crossed, you just put those black dots on the inside of their eyes. That could be pretty silly, couldn't it? Oh my gosh. All right. So your eyes, you're going to do little black dots. Tiny little touch. This is what, well, that one looks a little, that sheep was going to look a little crazy here. So you got to be really gentle with the black dots because, there we go. Look at my sheep just came to life like immediately. See these guys over here with the black dots? The lighter you touch the black dot, the smaller the eyes, the black dot will be. So it's kind of like, you gotta kind of play with it a little bit. If your black dots are too crazy, if your sheep comes out looking a little cuckoo, just let the black dry and you can go in and touch it up with some white. Okay. So I don't have like very fluffy, fuzzy sheep, so I'm gonna play with the texture a little bit more here. But to be mindful of time, I know we're almost at 2 hours. I'm gonna do the dark green below the sheep, because I do want that personally for shading. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to. It will be in the recording if you want to see it after. I'm just gonna grab a small, medium-sized brush to do the dark green. I'm probably gonna do the dark green, in this. I like this dark green that I used for, and this might be a little scary to some of you, so if you don't want to do it, you don't have to, but I'll do it first, just a guinea pig here. I don't know what this is going to turn out. I might add a little bit of white to it to soften this color. Not sure. Yeah, I still want it to be pretty dark though. All right, I'm just going to go for it. So there basically, there's little shadows. So it's going to kind of be a patch. So I'm going to leave a little bit of a gap by the legs, and I'm just going to kind of, see, I'm leaving a gap. I'm just going to kind of create a little bit of a shadow first. See, I have a clean green gap right here. So I'm creating a little bit, and I'll bring this up higher. Just kind of creating a barrier. And then I'm just gonna slowly just kind of start to fill it in. I'm just gonna slowly go like, just fill, kind of like a cloud. I don't know if that's the right way of explaining it, but I'm gonna connect the legs to this area. And I can always bring this up a little bit if I need to, like closer to the sheep, this shading. But I'm kind of creating like a cloud-like shape. And I've never done this before, so I'm like, and I'm gonna create a little head over here with a little ear. It gets it gets a little shaded area. And this is gonna come up a little higher. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use the flat side of this brush, and I'm gonna connect the legs to this area. It gets a shaded area. So I'm gonna connect the bottom of the legs, and I'm gonna use a way smaller brush. I'm gonna connect the legs to the shaded area. Now you can give it a, like a little bit of a tilt, like if the sun is shining, you can give it a little bit of a tilt. You can come straight down. I'm going to bring this up. See how it looks kind of funny? I'm going to bring it up, so don't worry. And I'm going to try to create it so it's like a little bit of a shadowed situation. So like this. And I'll probably put a little bit of gray on the underside of these sheep to make it look a little more normal too. So it's just about taking it one step at a time. I will do a watered gray down, a watered gray, and I'll bring this up a little higher so the shadow isn't so long from the legs. But I'll add a little extra shading on the underside of the sheep for it to look a little bit more normal. That will help. And I'm just going to bring this up. I'm going to make this a little bit like of a natural like progression here. And it may look funny to you, don't worry. I'll show you how to play with it a little bit. If you don't like this, you don't have to do it. A little scary after you spend all this time on doing one thing and doing something like this, but I'll show you where I'm going with it here. Oh, so I'm connecting on my legs to this, and then I'm going to do a little bit of a water wash with my gray on the underside. So I'm doing like a dark gray water wash over here on my plate, which you can't really see. So I'm doing like a dark gray water wash right here. Then I'm going to tuck on the underside of these sheep. So like right here. I might even go higher. Let me just see what going higher looks like. Yeah, you could go up in between their legs. create a little bit of shading, and it can come down. See, it's creating a little shading under here. That's helpful. You could also do like a little bit of a horizontal line going across the bottom of their legs, kind of like where this meets, to kind of show that this is a shaded area. So you can be playful here, right? So I'm experimenting and it's actually kind of working in this regard. So if you look over here, and this is a little risky, right? So I'm experimenting, it's all good. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to, but sometimes it's okay for me to show you something, and if you don't want to do it, you don't have to. But see how I did a couple of like horizontal lines here to kind of like show. You can do some finger smudging too, so left, right, horizontally. You could create just like a little bit of like a plane here. And if I don't like it, I could always paint over it. Like that's the cool thing. But I am adding a little bit of shading on the underside of these sheep, and for me, that's going pretty well. Just gonna use my finger to smudge it in. But what I'll probably do, ladies and gents, is I'll put in some flowers. You can put in some white flowers here and there. That might help break it up for you a little bit. I will take a minute to do some white flowers. So if anyone has to go, I totally get it. But I'm just going to show you what it looks like to add in some white flowers. I'm just kind of doing some horizontal brush strokes with a little bit of this blue, some smudging, just to kind of show you. We didn't add any texture down here. That's why it looks like inconsistent. So let's add some flowers and some grass-like texture. And it'll make it look a little bit more normal or better. So one of the things you can do is if you want to like make your grass look a little more grass-like, which will kind of, right now it looks like two separate shapes. That's why it looks kind of funny. If I come in here and I take a green, I can add in some grass blades. Just like even little lines to break it up right on top of this blue area. So some of you may have done this or not yet. I'm using a green color, spinning my brush, and I'm just going to add some like little grass blades here and there into my grass area, just to add some texture. And I'm doing it right within this space too. So, and I'll put some flowers in here. Just doing some like long little grass blades. I'll bring this down again. Sorry, I keep going up and down. And I'll put in little white flowers too. But play with using like a couple of coats, like different colors of green, just to do like little grass blades. You can make them like little grass blade like patches, like a 1, 2, 3 cluster. Or you could just do little kind of marks. This is adding texture to the field area. This is, again, it's just another detail like that this inspiration may need, right? Sometimes when we paint, it's really hard to complete something within such a short window. So we just recognize like sometimes artwork, especially like this, you can just do like, you can kind of create, see how it's breaking up that space a little bit. It's really light on my end, but I'll hold it up close. You can kind of see some of the texture that I'm doing. Kind of looks like my sheep are in water, but it won't look that way for long because I'm just adding these grass blades. And it's a little bit different of a color too. Like it's more of a bluish green for me versus like a darker green. I think if I did a little bit different of a color, it would look a little different, but it's okay. I'm not worried about it. It will be fine. So I'm just doing little kind of grass clusters. Not only in the shaded space, but all over to give my sheep something to eat. They really like grass. And I'm just doing it right here, kind of at their feet. I'm doing it on the left and on the right. And this helps a lot. It really helps make it look like a pasture. And I could spend like a half an hour playing with this, which I'll spend a little time here because I want to be happy, right, with the texture. But I'm just doing some long kind of V-like grass blades, some big and some small to fill in the scene. And then I can tuck in some cute little flowers too, which is really fun and nice. So I'm just adding in some like long grass and some short grass, all in this space. Kind of over the edges, if anybody did this shaded area, you can kind of go over the edges. You can paint over some of it if you want to. This is just a shaded area. So I'm just filling this in. The grass texture looks really nice. It's a nice compliment. You could do some lighter grass. You could do some darker grass. There's little white flowers with like pink on them. I could do little white flowers with orange in the center, right? That would match visually from a complementing the orange up top. So I'm just doing just enough. And I'll do flowers in just a minute. And my flowers are going to be really simple. I'm just doing enough. I'm kind of covering up some of this shadow so it looks like it's a part of the field, not just a blue blob. Because mine was more blue than green. That's why I think it was standing out so much. But now it's actually blending in, which is perfect. And I'm going to use the round end of one of these brushes. I'm going to get some white. And I'm just going to do a couple of like 1, 2 dots. And I'm just going to tuck in some white flowers, really abstract flowers, AKA like little details. And you can do some big ones and some small ones. I'm just doing like a little 1, 2 dot. See what's tying all the kind of colors together with the sheep. I'm just doing a couple of lighter ones in the shaded space. I'll probably make these a little bit more gray in the shaded space so the viewer knows that it's actually a shaded area. But you can see how it's really just starting to tie it all together with the sheep color. So you can decide what details you want to add and where, and I'll put little orange touches inside of these white flowers too. But I literally just used the round end of this brush. And just use your eye. You don't want to do too many, right? But I'm going to zoom this back so you can see the overall composition on how those little white flowers kind of tie everything together. And in person, I can see some of this detail here on top of the blue. But I could just grab, I need to make a little bit more orange, but let's see. Yeah, I'm going to make a little bit more. I think the little orange touch on these flowers look really pretty. I just need to make a little bit more orange. All right. And this is fun, right? You just do your own thing. And if you need to do anything different, then just do something different. It's all good. It's fun to experiment in these classes. I can probably come in here with a fine brush and do more grass blades. It's probably one thing I would do to like invest a little more time into this is do some more grass blades and more texture in the field. But I'm just going to grab the round end of a brush. I have some orange. And I'm just going to do a little 1, 2 of orange. Even if the white's wet, it's okay. Just do a couple tiny dots of orange here and there. And this will tie your orange into any of your hills. If you want to do little blue dots or green dots, you can decide if you want secondary, whatever secondary color you want for these little wildflowers, you can pick and choose. I'm doing orange because it will look great with, and I'm just doing little dots inside, and I'll hold this up close in just a minute so you can see what the heck I'm doing. Doing little dots all over. Right inside of the white. I'm not doing them in their own areas. I'm doing the orange dots as a complementary color, as an accent to the white flowers. So these are like little white and orange wildflowers. Okay, I'm gonna hold this up so you can see it. See those just like little tiny orange dots. Again, you don't have to do that. Areas where I would spend more time on tonight's is if you want to add nice shading on the underside of your sheep, that would look great. If I want to soften like this color, I could easily do that with a little green. So if anybody added like a certain blue, or if it just doesn't look right, just know you can soften it. I can always come in and I can add in some more texture. I can do some smudging. There's ways of like softening the shade if you don't like it. So for me, I could easily come in, look at this. It's just not that difficult to make adjustments. Coming in and just softening the shade. For me, I had too blue of a color. That's why it was standing out so boldly. But I can come in and soften this with a green, and it already looks more smooth. So it's just about like recognizing, like, if you wanted to make changes, you can always make changes to something. Like I can come in with some horizontal brush strokes and just soften this, and it's no big deal. But I do like the shading underneath it. For me, I think it was a really fun thing to do. It's just a little too blue, but I like it. It added some fun texture. So I'm just doing some green kind of on top of it. And I'm just showing you what it's like just to make modifications, and it's okay. It's always okay to do that. And I still have grass texture here, which is good. Smudging it with my finger. I'm kind of dancing around my flowers I just painted. But you can see I softened it. It's wet right now. The other areas I would invest time is doing more like sheep fur-like detail. Obviously, we're at 9 o'clock or 10 after, so I want to be thoughtful of your time there. But I would do some more like curly-Q detail. But I'll go ahead, and we're in gallery view. If anybody wants to show off their work, I'd love to see it. I want to be mindful of folks' time. I know we went a little over tonight, but I hope that you all enjoyed it. Look, oh, look at, that's a great green patch right there. Nice, Jenny, you too. See, it's good contrast to have those separate colors. Nice. I love this. Kim went small with her sheep. Look at those little sheep. All right, Susan and Jenny, you hold those sheep up again. Here comes Sandra and Dory. So cute. Susan has curious ears. All right, those white flowers look good. Terrific. Nice job, ladies. I hope you all had fun tonight. I want to thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That was a fun one.
Yeah. And it's just about you all, some of you got that green for the reflection right away. Mine just was a little too bluish green, but I can easily come in here and fix that, which I will. But I want to thank you all for being here. I hope you enjoyed yourselves. I thought you did phenomenal.
My sheep need to grow a little.
You have little sheep. There's nothing wrong with that.
They're far away, apparently.
Well, it's so funny, like the scale. They're either too big, too small, or just right. You never know what's gonna happen.
Right.
But I love it. Well, you can always, if you like your sheep where they are, you can always add something else to your composition if you wanted to, Kim, right?
Sure, yes.
So that's always another option. So don't ever hesitate for your painting to continue to evolve. You know, you could always add something else in. to, you know, if you wanted to. You could add more sheep
Yes.
too,
Right,
you know? All
right,
good.
absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for being here. It's so good to see you. And please let me know if you have any questions, but thank you.
Bye, Megan.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care.